perception is reality, but the media around him was extraordinary. I'd only been in the job about 6 weeks when a rumour started doing the rounds to find a page 3 girl torn out of a magazine, stuck onto the whiteboard. I'm Kate Oram, and this is Lessons from the Touchline. This is the last episode of this season, so I want to leave you with the one that, looking back, probably shaped how I operate more than any other. It's about a phrase I've always loved: perception is reality. But before I tell you my version of it, I want to start with possibly the most famous example of it in the whole of sport. I'm going to take you back to 1963, and a young boxer called Cassius Clay, not yet Muhammad Ali, records a spoken word album called I Am the Greatest. On it, he declares himself repeatedly, at length, and with enormous confidence to be exactly that, the greatest. Now, here's the thing. At that point, he hadn't won the world heavyweight title. That fight against Sonny Liston, a genuinely terrifying champion nobody expected him to beat, was still 6 months away. He was the underdog. By most people's measure, he had absolutely no business calling himself the greatest anything. But he won anyway, and years later, reflecting on that album, on saying the words before he'd proven a single one of them, he said something that has always stuck with me. I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. Now let's think about that for a second. He built the perception first. He said the thing out loud repeatedly before the reality had caught up with it, and then he went and did the work to make it true. I learned my own considerably less glamorous version of that lesson in my early career in professional rugby, and it started with a story that I'm very much less proud of. But first, I'm going to tell you quickly about a young player at a rival club around that time, because it's the flip side of the Ali coin. Now, this player was talented, he was very good looking, he was exciting to watch, but he wasn't the most experienced. He was still very much learning his trade, but the media around him was extraordinary, out of all proportion to what he'd actually achieved. He got hailed as the next best thing before he'd properly earned it. And I remember one grudge match against the team he played for, and we won convincingly. And when I went to ask the press pack afterwards who they wanted to interview, not one of them was interested in any of our players who had actually won the game. They just wanted this star player. Now, his career never actually really took off, and by his own account since, all those column inches did for him was more harm than good. So Ali's version of building perception ahead of reality worked because he backed it up, but this other rugby player didn't, because the perception outran anything real underneath, and it can just as easily crush you as carry you. Right, so my turn. Now, I'd only been in the job about 6 weeks when a rumour started doing the rounds. I'd walked out of the building at the same time as one of the players, completely innocently. We'd literally just left at the same moment. But the rumour mill didn't care about that detail. By the time it'd done a lap of the building, it had turned into something else entirely. And on the Monday morning, I walked into the club dining room to find a page 3 girl torn out of a magazine, stuck onto the whiteboard. Underneath it, someone had written, "Hi, I'm the new press officer. Do you want my number?" And I had to react fast. As I walked past the tables where the players were eating breakfast, I could feel every single one of them watching me, waiting to see what I'd do. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I stopped at the whiteboard, read it, and in that split second decided the only move was to not flinch. So I shrugged, laughed a little, and walked off. It came down that afternoon. That was an extreme example, and looking back, it was bullying, plain and simple, but it wasn't the only pressure I was under that season. The rumour mill kept turning, and going out for a drink after a match, something I'd always done before I even worked at the club, suddenly became fuel for gossip I couldn't control. And about 6 weeks in, it properly got to me, and I rang my best friend and I told her I didn't think I could do it. It was just too hard. But she didn't let me off the hook. She said, "Get to Christmas, and if you still hate it, then quit. But give it a fair try." And I'd barely put the phone down from her when one of the players rang, one of the nicer ones of the bunch, checking I was okay. And his advice was simple: keep your head down, don't go out for a while, and they won't have anything left to talk about. I hated that advice because it felt deeply unfair that I had to change my behaviour, my life, when I hadn't done anything wrong. but I took it anyway. I didn't go out again. After a match, well, until the following year, actually. And what I actually did underneath that was decide to take control of my own PR, the same way Ali had, just with considerably less swagger and no album deal. Nobody was going to hand me a fair perception, so I had to build one. I stopped getting drawn into banter that wasn't about work. I stopped answering text messages that weren't relevant to my job. I still went to the gym, I still went out for runs, so people saw me, but there was nothing left for anyone to gossip about. If you want to be perceived a certain way, you have to actually live that way consistently, whether anyone's watching or not. By the end of that first season, it had worked. I was respected by the team and the coaches. It wasn't plain sailing to get there, and I don't think the questions and the scrutiny ever fully stopped, but the real proof came when players and coaches started approaching me themselves, asking for help raising their profiles. And that's when you know the perceptions finally caught up with the reality you've been building the whole time. I do want to add one honest caveat here, because managing your own PR can tip into something less healthy if you're not careful. A couple of years later, I'd had a health problem that meant going into hospital, and I'd cancelled a rugby dinner event and a media launch because of it. And the head coach at the time made it well known he wasn't pleased about that. So the day after my surgery, feeling absolutely horrific, I got on a plane and flew to France for a match anyway. And that sent me straight back into hospital when I got home. Nobody thought I was impressive for it. They just saw someone who'd put the job before her own well-being. So if you're building your own perception, make sure self-respect is baked into it, because the version of you that's still standing matters more than the version of you that never says no. So here's what I'd leave you with, both for this episode and the whole season. Work out your mission, what you're actually trying to achieve. Work out your values, the things you won't negotiate on, and then work out the perception you want people to have of you and live by consistently in the small moments nobody's watching, not just the big ones where you know you're being judged. Say it before you're sure of it, like Ali did, and then go and make it true. That is the whole game. And before I go, I'm signing off for the summer, and I think this is a great place to leave season 1. I've loved making this, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to it just as much. If you have, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear which episode helped you the most. And if there's anything you'd like me to cover next season, any stories you want dragged out of the archive, any topics I haven't touched yet, let me know there too. I read every single one. That's it for season 1 of Lessons from the Touchline. I'm Kate Oram. Find me on Spotify and come and say hello over on Substack. I will see you in September.